My name is Charlotte Kensington. I'm 34 years old, and until about 6 weeks ago, I believed that if you built your life carefully enough, nothing really collapsed without warning. Not overnight. Not without signs. I work as a logistics manager for a regional construction supplier in Charlotte, North Carolina. My world is schedules, freight costs, contracts, contingencies. I don't guess, I don't improvise, I build systems that hold. Or at least, I thought I did. Ethan Cole is 31, my boyfriend, or he was. He's the kind of man people notice the second he walks into a room. Easy smile, confident posture, always aware, almost instinctively, of how he's being perceived. He works in marketing for a boutique fitness brand, which fits him perfectly. Everything in his world revolves around image, presentation, control. We had been together a little over 4 years, engaged for 8 months, living in my townhouse for almost a year, a place I bought long before I met him. 1 bedroom, nothing extravagant, but every inch of it was mine. Earned, calculated, stable. From the outside, we looked solid, the kind of couple people assume already picked baby names. What we had actually built was something else entirely. I handled numbers. Ethan handled narratives, and Ethan loved a narrative, especially once the wedding planning started. At first, we were aligned. A small fall wedding in Asheville, about 70 guests, a total budget just under $24,000. I had $13,500 saved. He contributed $5,000. Our families offered to help with flowers and the rehearsal dinner. For the honeymoon, we agreed on a week in Maui the following spring. A nice resort, ocean view, if we could stretch it. Around $7,200 total, including flights. It was reasonable. It was real. It was enough. Then Ethan discovered honeymoon content. Not travel. Content. Overwater villas, floating breakfasts, flower baths, couples in white linen posing on private decks somewhere in French Polynesia, places where no one seemed to work, sweat, age, or ask who paid for any of it. At first, it was harmless. He'd send me videos during lunch. Look at this water, he'd say, like water in Hawaii wasn't already good enough. Or, tell me that wouldn't be unforgettable. I'd laugh. It would also be unaffordable. He'd pout for 10 seconds. Then he'd move on. Except he didn't. He just stopped arguing directly. Instead, he started reframing things. People forget the wedding, he said one night, while scrolling beside me on the couch. They remember the honeymoon. Another time, if we're only doing this once, why would we do it small? And then, more pointed, if we need to pull money from somewhere, nobody actually cares about chair covers or welcome bags. I kept repeating the same sentence. I'm fine spending on the trip. I'm not going into debt for a vacation. It should have been simple. It wasn't. The beginning of the end came on a Thursday afternoon. I was at work reviewing freight costs for a job in Greensboro when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but half my job is answering strange calls from strange places. So I picked up. It was a travel agency in Honolulu. The woman on the line was polite, cheerful. She asked if I wanted to keep the business class upgrade attached to my Bora Bora package because a second payment had just failed. For a moment, I thought she had the wrong Charlotte. She didn't. By the end of that call, my stomach felt cold. Ethan had booked a 10-night honeymoon package to Bora Bora and Maria. Total cost, $16,940. It included upgraded flights out of Los Angeles, a private photo session, a romance dinner under the stars, spa treatments, and a flower arrival service that cost $390 by itself. He had already paid a $4,500 deposit on my American Express, a card stored on our shared travel account from a trip we took last year. He had also transferred $3,800 out of our joint wedding account. Hold space, the agent said. I still hate that phrase. I called Ethan immediately. No answer. I texted, "Did you book a $16,000 honeymoon on my card?" 11 minutes later, he replied, "Can we not do this over text? It was supposed to be a surprise." A surprise. I left work early. I drove straight to the wine bar where he was meeting his friend Kelsey to talk seating charts. He was sitting on the patio with a charcuterie board, 2 spritzes, and the relaxed expression of someone who believed charm could fix anything. When I sat down, he smiled, like I was about to thank him. I asked one question. "Did you charge $4,500 on my card and move $3,800 from the wedding account without asking me?" He exhaled, not guilty, annoyed. Then he said yes, casually, like the truth was helping him. He started talking quickly about limited availability, staged refunds, once-in-a-lifetime experiences. He had done the math, he said. If we trimmed other expenses, used gift money, delayed the kitchen remodel, it's manageable, he finished. I looked at him. No, I said, not maybe, not later, no. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and looked at me like I had just failed something important. Then he said it. It's our honeymoon, Charlotte. If you won't pay for the honeymoon I deserve, there won't be a wedding. Kelsey went very still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just looked at him and said, then there won't be. He blinked, like I had missed my cue. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny, because he thought I was bluffing. Stop, he said. You're embarrassed. Sit down. I stood up instead, left money on the table, and walked away. By the time I reached my car, he had called 7 times. By the time I got home, 19. His texts came in waves. You're overreacting. This is wedding stress, not a breakup. Charlotte, don't be cruel. You cannot end an engagement over a honeymoon. But it wasn't the honeymoon. It was the entitlement, the theft, the way he turned a boundary into an insult. That night, I made 4 decisions. And without realizing it, first, I froze my American Express and disputed the Bora Bora deposit. The card company told me it might be complicated because the card had been stored on a shared travel account, and Ethan had used it before with my permission for smaller things. Flights, hotels, rental cars, normal expenses. Not a nearly $17,000 Fantasy Island package he booked behind my back. Still, they opened a case. Second, I moved my remaining portion of the wedding fund into a new account after documenting every transaction. I left Ethan's $5,000 untouched in the original account and emailed him the ledger, so there would be no confusion later. No accusations, no emotional paragraphs, just numbers. Third, I changed the keypad code on my townhouse and scheduled a locksmith for the backup key. That cost me $268 the next morning, which felt absurd and necessary at the same time. Fourth, I created a folder on my desktop titled Wedding. Inside it, I made subfolders: travel, venue, flowers, texts, bank, legal. Something in me already knew. This was not over. Ethan didn't come home that night. He stayed with Kelsey, which was almost funny considering she had witnessed the exact moment he detonated our engagement, and still somehow became his emotional shelter. At 1:14 a.m., he sent an email. Subject line: you will regret making a permanent decision over temporary stress. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Temporary stress. That was what he called using my credit card without permission. That was what he called moving money from our wedding account. That was what he called threatening the wedding, because I refused to finance the version of himself he wanted strangers online to envy. I did not answer. The next morning, I began calling vendors. The venue deposit was $2,100 and only partially refundable. The florist kept $600. The photographer, surprisingly, refunded everything except a $250 booking fee. When I explained the situation, she paused and said, anyone willing to impersonate common sense before the wedding usually gets worse after it. At the time, I almost laughed. Later, I realized she had given me the entire plot. Because Ethan did not react like someone who had been left. He reacted like someone whose stage had been dismantled while he was still performing. 3 days after I ended the engagement, he changed tactics. The late-night texts slowed down. The dramatic emails stopped. The "you're cruel" messages disappeared. Then pressure started coming from the sides. First came Kelsey, from an unknown number. I know he messed up, she wrote. But are you really throwing away 4 years over a honeymoon upgrade? I replied once. No, I'm ending it over unauthorized charges and an ultimatum. Please don't contact me again. Then came his mother, Donna. She opened with, I'm staying out of it. Anyone who begins with that sentence is not, in fact, staying out of it. Donna said Ethan was humiliated, overwhelmed, under wedding pressure. She said men sometimes struggle when they feel they cannot give their future wife something extraordinary. I asked whether feeling extraordinary usually included spending someone else's money. The call ended quickly after that. Then Ethan emailed me a PDF titled Revised Plan. Not apology. Not accountability. Revised Plan. It was 11 pages long. A new wedding budget. A payment calendar for the honeymoon balance. A section about using cash gifts to offset the cost. A note on page 9 that literally said, once we're there, you'll thank me for thinking bigger. I almost admired the audacity. Almost. Instead, I saved the PDF into the folder and kept moving. That afternoon, the travel agency called again. Same cheerful number, different tone. The agent said someone claiming to be Charlotte Kensington's assistant had emailed them asking that all honeymoon communications be redirected to a new email address and that future refunds be sent to a Wells Fargo account ending in 4,421. I do not have an assistant. I do not bank with Wells Fargo. The new email address was charlotteandethantravel@gmail.com. Ethan had invented a fictional assistant to keep control of a trip I had explicitly rejected. I asked the agent to lock the file, note the dispute, and send me copies of everything. She did. 8 emails. 1 fake signature block. A polite lie about me being difficult to reach because I was often away at job sites. That was the moment something inside me stopped hoping this could stay private. Because Ethan was not spiraling near me. He was forging paperwork in my name. I hired an attorney the next morning. Family law was packed, so I found a civil attorney named Brent, who handled contract disputes and restraining orders when necessary. His retainer was $1,750. Best money I spent all month. Brent listened without interrupting. He didn't widen his eyes. He didn't tell me I was being dramatic. He just took notes while I slid printed emails across his desk with hands that were steadier than I felt. When I finished, he looked at the fake assistant email and said, "This is where he made it easier for us." I didn't know whether to feel relieved or sick. He drafted 2 letters, one to Ethan demanding that he stop impersonating me, stop contacting vendors on my behalf, preserve all communications, and cease any third-party pressure. One to the travel agency formally disputing any authorization beyond our original Maui planning discussion. While Brent was doing that, Ethan moved from paperwork to performance. On Saturday afternoon, my doorbell camera alerted me. He was sitting on my front step in a white sweatshirt that said "Groom" in gold lettering, with the navy luggage set I had bought during a Black Friday sale stacked beside him like a tiny airport. He rang once, then twice. Then he just stayed there. After 15 minutes, he started recording himself, crying. I watched from my office upstairs and did not open the door. Then he knocked again. "Charlotte, I know you're in there," he called. "We don't destroy a marriage before it starts because of one fight. One fight." At that point, the unauthorized card charge, the drained wedding account, the fake assistant email, and the ultimatum had all been rebranded as one fight. I called the neighborhood security patrol. Since it was a private townhouse community, they came quickly. A guard walked him, and the luggage to the curb. Ethan looked furious, not broken. Furious. 20 minutes later, flowers arrived at my office. White orchids. Probably $140 minimum. The card read, "For my future wife. Stop punishing me for dreaming big." Dana, the receptionist on our floor, carried them into my office, holding the card between 2 fingers like it was leaking. She asked, "Is this romantic or evidence?" I said, "Evidence." She smiled once, took a picture for me, and then we left the orchids in the break room for anyone who wanted free flowers from a failed engagement. By Monday, Ethan had posted a vague Instagram story about being abandoned by a woman who feared beautiful things. That got enough attention from mutual friends that my younger cousin texted me asking if I had really called off a wedding because Ethan wanted a better beach. No, I called off a wedding because Ethan thought a better beach entitled him to my money, my name, my signature, and my silence. The first person from his side who spoke to me like a sane adult was his older sister, Lydia. She called Tuesday evening. "I'm not defending him," she said quietly. "I just need to know whether he actually moved money without asking." "Yes," I said. She was silent for a second. Then she sighed. "Okay, that tracks more than I wanted it to." Apparently, Ethan had once used a previous girlfriend's airline miles to book a surprise boys' trip and acted wounded when she got angry. Useful pattern. Terrible timing. Lydia also told me Donna was still telling people the wedding was on pause, and Ethan was calling vendors saying I needed a few days to cool off. I did not need a few days. I needed everything frozen. So Brent sent a second round of notices. The venue, the florist, the planner, the DJ, the travel agency. Anyone with my name on a contract received written instructions. No modification, refund, reroute, or event continuation was authorized without direct phone verification and a copy of my driver's license. It was exhausting. But it worked for about 48 hours. Then Ethan escalated again. 2.5 weeks after the breakup, Ethan found the one pressure point he thought would make me bend. My job. It happened on a Wednesday morning. My HR manager, Lisa, stopped by my desk and asked, "Do you have 10 minutes?" That sentence is never neutral. I followed her into her office and immediately saw the printed email on her desk. No letterhead, no real name, just a Gmail address that read, "Concern for bride and groom at something." Even before I sat down, I understood. Ethan! The email claimed I had financially abused my fiancé, that I had canceled our honeymoon to punish him, that I was withholding access to shared funds and creating an emotionally unsafe environment that could impact my leadership judgment at work. There was even a line that said I had become volatile since wedding planning began. Volatile. I almost smiled at that word, because if there was anything I had been through this entire situation, it was controlled. Lisa didn't react immediately. She just looked at me and said, "Is there context I should know?" I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself with emotion. I walked back to my desk, picked up my laptop, and brought it into her office. Then I opened the folder. Wedding. I showed her everything. Texts, bank transfers, vendor emails, the fake assistant messages, the dispute confirmation, the ledger, the security footage screenshots, the flower card, the PDF titled Revised Plan, even the Venmo request he had sent 2 days earlier. $2,240 labeled half of lost honeymoon value. Lisa read quietly. 6 minutes, no interruptions. Then she looked up and said, "Okay, you're not the problem here." I felt something shift in my chest when she said that, not relief. Validation. Then she asked, "Do you want building security notified in case he shows up?" At the time, I thought that was precautionary. It wasn't. 2 days later, at exactly 9:18 a.m., Ethan walked into our office lobby. He was wearing a short white suit, not formal enough to be a tuxedo, not casual enough to be normal, just symbolic, calculated. He was carrying a leather portfolio and the passport holder he had bought for our honeymoon. The front desk called upstairs before he got past security. Lisa stepped into my office and said, "Is your ex in white at reception?" I stared at her for a second. Then I stood up. I went downstairs myself, not because I wanted to see him, but because I didn't want anyone else improvising around whatever scene he was about to create. When I stepped into the lobby, he turned immediately and smiled. Not warmly, not nervously, confidently, like he had finally forced the moment he'd been trying to manufacture for weeks. "Good," he said, "because you've been acting impossible. We need to finish the honeymoon paperwork before you do something stupid with the refunds." I didn't move closer. "Ethan, leave." He held out the passport holder like it was evidence of something binding. "I already forgave you for humiliating me," he said. "Stop making this uglier. There is something deeply unsettling about someone offering forgiveness for something you didn't do." "Leave," I repeated. His smile tightened. Then he lowered his voice, just enough to make it feel like a private conversation in a public space. "I am not walking away from $16,000 and my own wedding story because you're having a control issue." There it was again. Not us. Not love. His story. Security stepped in. He tried to step around them, angling toward me like proximity alone would change the outcome. It didn't. They escorted him out while he kept talking. "You don't get to steal my honeymoon." My honeymoon. Even now. Still possession. The lobby cameras caught everything. Lisa saved the footage before lunch. That same afternoon, Brent filed for an emergency protective order. At the same time, the financial situation tightened. The credit card company completed its investigation and reversed the $4,500 charge. Clean. Efficient. Helpful. What wasn't clean was the missing $3,800 from the joint account. Ethan had already moved it into his personal account and spent part of it on the Bora Bora planning fee, on a white outfit for honeymoon dinners, on custom luggage tags with our initials. Since the account was joint, the bank classified it as a civil dispute, which is a polite way of saying, your problem. So Brent shifted toward civil recovery, and Ethan stayed consistent. He sent me another Venmo request, this time with a note, "You owe your half." I declined it and took a screenshot. A few days later, I agreed to dinner with someone new. Daniel, a friend of my sister's, a nurse. This wasn't a dramatic rebound. There were no declarations, no emotional speeches. Just a quiet dinner at a small Italian place across town. He was easy to talk to, calm, present. The kind of person who listens without waiting to redirect the conversation back to himself. It felt unfamiliar, in a good way. We had just ordered when Ethan appeared beside the table. No warning, no hesitation. Just there, holding a printed copy of the Bora Bora itinerary in a clear plastic sleeve. For a second, everything slowed. Daniel looked up, then looked at me, not panicked, just reading the situation. Ethan didn't even acknowledge him. He looked at me and said, "So this is why you're willing to waste our honeymoon." "Ethan," I said evenly, "leave now." He stepped closer and placed the itinerary on the table between us, like it was evidence in a trial. 10 nights, overwater villa, sunset dinner. You really threw that away for what? Pride? Daniel spoke then, quietly. He asked you to leave. Ethan finally looked at him and smiled. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was worse. Polished. Controlled. The kind of smile designed to dismiss someone without raising a voice. Enjoy the leftovers, he said. Then he reached for the itinerary again and knocked over my water glass. The spill spread instantly across the table, across the menus, into Daniel's lap. The entire restaurant went silent. That kind of silence. The kind that sharpens everything. The manager came over immediately. I said one sentence. She has an active filing against him. Please call the police. Ethan didn't wait. He left before they arrived. The restaurant pulled footage. Staff gave statements. Daniel just sat there for a second, then picked up his napkin and calmly started blotting his shirt. Well, he said, almost amused, now I have a very clear opinion about him. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That was the night something inside me shifted completely. Because up until then, part of me had still been carrying guilt. Not for what I did, but for how far it had gone. After that night, the guilt was gone. Because Ethan wasn't heartbroken. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was trying to win something. And he had decided that if he couldn't have the ending he wanted, he would force it into existence. No matter how it looked, no matter who it affected. And that was when I stopped hesitating and started finishing it. The hearing was scheduled faster than I expected. 12 days after the restaurant incident. 12 days of silence on the surface and constant movement underneath. Brent handled everything with the kind of calm efficiency I had spent my entire career respecting. Every document was organized. Every timeline cross-referenced, every message, receipt, and screenshot placed exactly where it needed to be. There was no emotion in the binder, just truth. Ethan arrived early. I saw him across the hallway before we were called in. Navy dress shirt, dark slacks, clean, controlled. His hair styled the way he used to wear it to events where he knew photos would be taken. He looked reasonable. That was the point. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He gave a small nod. Like we were two professionals about to finalize a contract, not two people who had been planning a wedding a month earlier. When we entered the courtroom, he shifted again, shoulders slightly lower, expression softer, voice measured. He had chosen a different version of himself for this setting, one that looked like someone who had simply made a few emotional mistakes under pressure. If you didn't know anything, you might have believed him. His attorney leaned heavily into that version. He described Ethan's actions as impulsive decisions made during the emotional strain of planning a major life event. He called the office incident an attempt at reconciliation and financial clarity. He described the restaurant confrontation as unfortunate, but not threatening. He said the emails to vendors were misguided attempts to manage shared logistics. Misguided. That word stayed with me. Because nothing Ethan had done felt misguided. It felt intentional, layered, escalating. Brent didn't interrupt. He didn't argue emotionally. He just stood when it was his turn and handed the judge the binders. 2 of them. One for the protective order, one for the financial dispute. The judge opened the first one slowly. Read. Turned a page. Read again. There was no rush, no performance, just quiet attention. Then he stopped, looked up, and read something out loud. Please redirect all refund activity to my Wells Fargo account while Charlotte is unavailable and difficult to reach. He lowered the paper slightly and looked at Ethan. Why were you redirecting refunds to an account not in Miss Kensington's name? Ethan didn't answer immediately. For the first time since I had known him, he hesitated. I believed the honeymoon belonged to both of us, he said finally. The judge nodded once. That is not the same as believing you may impersonate her. There it was. Clear. Simple. Unavoidable. Then he turned another page. And this, he said, is from a text message. He read it out loud. If you won't pay for the honeymoon I deserve, there won't be a wedding. The words sounded different in that room. Stripped of tone. Stripped of context. Just what they were. He looked at me. Did you respond? Yes, Your Honor. What did you say? I met his gaze. I said, then there won't be. There was a pause. Not dramatic. Just final. The judge nodded again, like something had clicked into place. The rest moved quickly after that. The protective order was granted. 1 year. No contact. No indirect contact. 500 feet from my home, my workplace, and my vehicle. The financial dispute was less clean. The court acknowledged the $3,800 Ethan had transferred from the joint account. Through his attorney, he agreed to repay $2,900 within 60 days rather than continue litigation. Not everything, but enough. Enough to close it. When the hearing ended, I didn't feel relief the way I expected. I felt still, like something that had been vibrating in the background for weeks had finally stopped. Ethan didn't look at me as we left. He stayed seated for a moment longer, then stood and walked out with his attorney. No scene, no final words, just gone. In the hallway, Donna approached me. I braced myself for defense, for justification, for blame. Instead, she looked tired, older than she had on the phone. I should have listened harder, she said quietly, when you asked whether softness includes spending someone else's money. I didn't respond. There wasn't really anything to say. She exhaled. For what it's worth, this isn't the first time Ethan has confused wanting something with being owed it. That should have mattered more earlier. At that point, it just confirmed everything I already knew. I left the courthouse alone, walked to my car, sat there for a few minutes without turning the engine on. Just breathing, because for the first time in weeks, there was nothing left to respond to. No message coming. No call to return. No situation escalating somewhere just out of sight. It was over. Not clean. Not simple. But over. And strangely, that was enough. In the weeks after the hearing, my life didn't dramatically transform. It didn't need to. That was the point. Things just stabilized. Work first. Lisa handled everything with a level of professionalism that made the entire situation feel contained. The lobby footage never circulated beyond who needed to see it. HR closed the case quietly. My performance review still happened on schedule. And a week later, I was promoted to senior operations manager. The raise alone was more than the original Maui honeymoon budget. Life has a sense of humor like that. The financial side resolved itself slowly. Ethan repaid $2,900 of the joint account funds within the 60-day window. Combined with the reversed $4,500 credit card charge, I recovered most of what mattered. My total loss, after vendor fees, legal costs, the locksmith, and the deposits that didn't come back, was about $4,300. An expensive lesson, but significantly cheaper than the version of marriage I almost signed up for. As for Ethan, he disappeared from my life exactly the way the protective order required. Cleanly. Completely. The only things I heard came secondhand. Through mutual connections. Through his sister, Lydia, once. Through silence, mostly. He lost his job not long after the hearing. Not because of the breakup, because of the way he handled it. Apparently, taking personal calls during work hours, managing vendor disputes from his office, and then disappearing the morning he showed up at mine, didn't sit well with his employer. Consequences tend to arrive eventually, even when they're delayed. Donna didn't contact me again, and I didn't reach out. Some relationships don't need closure. They just need distance. The strangest part of everything wasn't what happened. It was how many people tried to reduce it. It was just a honeymoon. You could have compromised. Was it really worth ending everything over a trip? No, it was never about the trip. It was about what he believed the trip represented, what he believed he was entitled to. My money, my agreement, my name, my signature, my silence, my future. And the moment I said no, he treated that no like a problem to solve, not an answer to respect. That was the real ending, not the argument, not the breakup. That moment. Because someone who loves you doesn't need to force romance through debt, or impersonation, or public scenes, or pressure from other people. Love doesn't escalate when it's denied. It listens. It adjusts. It respects the boundary, even when it doesn't like it. Anything else is something else entirely. Daniel and I kept seeing each other, slowly, normally. No declarations, no intensity. Just dinners, conversations, small, unremarkable moments that felt steady. There was no performance, no need to prove anything, no underlying negotiation about how things would look to other people. 3 weekends ago, we took a short trip to Charleston. Not a honeymoon, just a trip. We walked along the water, ate shrimp and grits, talked about nothing important. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't measuring anything. Not cost, not perception, not whether it matched someone else's idea of what it should be. It was just good, and that was enough. Maybe more than enough. Looking back now, the most unsettling part isn't what Ethan did. It's how easily it could have been explained away. How close I came to convincing myself it was stress, or excitement, or a misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was clarity, just delivered in a way I didn't want to see. Because when someone says, "If you won't give me the future I deserve, there won't be a wedding," they are not negotiating. They are telling you exactly how conditional their love is. I just chose to believe him. And once I did,